Alright. So disclaimer before I start, this is gonna be a paladin guide. I am not a paladin main, I barely know how to play this job, so it might be a little sloppy. I'm more of a samurai main myself personally, and of course Gunbreaker. That's it. This is gonna be just a very simple beginner's guide for paladin. Explain the rotation and a couple tips and tricks. Paladin's very simple. First off, I will show the rotation at its very core. Just forget about the cooldowns, forget about the weaves, just the basic core of your rotation. For the most part, you have Fast Blade and Riot Blade, which combo into each other, and then you can combo that into either Royal Authority or Goring Blade. And you always want to alternate between these. This is your base combo that you'll be using for most of, well, your Paladin gameplay. Another one that we have is Requiescat, which unlocks Holy Spirit into Confiteor. That is our magic rotation. I will show that as well, but I can show like the very base rotation. Again, I will not weave anything, I will just show what happens. So we start our combo, and we do Goring Blade first because we want to have our dot up. We just want to have Goring Blade up. After that, we go into Royal Authority, which gives us Atonement. And we just use this 3 times. You literally just hit Atonement 3 times and you're done. And then we go back and we refresh our Goring Blade, after which we will immediately weave in Requiescat and do Holy Spirit. This is something we do 4 times because we don't want to run out of MP, as we are going to finish this with a Confiteor. After which we immediately go back to refresh our Goring Blade, and it essentially continues like this. After Goring Blade is refreshed, we do our other rotation where we go to, other combo rather, where we go back into Royal Authority and Atonement. And that's it. That's as basic as it gets. That's what you will be doing most of the time, except obviously with some cooldowns weaved in the middle of it, which I will now showcase. So we have Circle of Scorn. This is an AoE ability, but we also do want to use it obviously as a weave. And then we have Spirits Within. One thing to note about Spirits Within that you probably don't really care about is that it does less damage the less health you have. You can see potency increases as your own HP nears maximum. So optimally, you would only use this when you have high health, but that's such a very niche little optimization, don't worry about it. And then we have Fight or Flight. This is our main damage cooldown. Every tank has something similar to this, and this is when we want to do the most of our damage. Now, we also have Intervene. Again, something every tank has, just a basic charging attack. It has alright range. We leap in, we do some damage. Obviously, we want to use this as a gap closer if it's needed, so we can get to the boss faster. If that is not required, however, we will use this as a damage cooldown during Fight or Flight. Circle of Scorn and Spirits Within we will literally use on cooldown. When they come up, use them. Sometimes they will align, sometimes they won't. Paladin sucks. And I will showcase the full opener now by doing all the weaves and doing Fight or Flight. I can't really slow this down, so I hope it's still like logical enough. We are going to weave in, we're going to do Fast Blade, and then we're going to weave in Circle of Scorn and Fight or Flight. It's going to be a double weave, after which we do a Riot Blade, and then we do Spirits Within and Intervene. So there's 2 double weaves in a row. You'll be okay. If you can't double weave at all, then you can space them out a little bit. The high priority is that you use Fight or Flight. You can skip Circle of Scorn and do it later if you can't double weave. But optimally, it goes like this. Fast Blade, Circle of Scorn, Fight or Flight, use our next attack, weave in Spirits Within, Intervene, Goring Blade, Intervene again, and that's the hard part. It goes very fast, but you'll be okay. And then we do our Atonement combo. It's just a very beginning that's difficult because you have so many things happening at once, but Once you get the hang of it, you're fine. Now we use Circle of Scorn again, and then Goring Blade, Requiescat into Magic. So that's another kind of a double weave situation there, but it's fine. We're not really double, but you have to do it very fast. And we finish a Magic rotation with Confiteor, and we go back and refresh our Goring Blade. Intervene, don't use it. This one you do not use on cooldown. The other ones you use, but Intervene you save Fireflight. Here we have two options right now. I can use 3 atonements, but as you can tell, my Fight or Flight is about to come up. It's up. And I'm using it now. So, Paladin rotation is weird, and I can show you why. Fight or Flight has a recast time of 60 seconds, that's a minute. The Paladin rotation is 63 seconds. We go 3 seconds over, so if you want to fit in that last atonement, you will just have to wait until Fight or Flight comes back up. You can drop 1 atonement at the end to use your Fight or Flight sooner. However, you don't really have to do that. I don't think it's even better in terms of DPS. I generally use all 3 atonements and then go back. It's a minor optimization thing in some boss fights where you want to drop an atonement. But again, you can just use all 3. You'll be fine. But yeah, Spirits Within, Circle of Scorn, use them whenever they're up. But just make sure that when you do your opener, you do Fast Blade, Scorn, and then Fight or Flight. That's your double weave order. For Intervene and Spirits Within, the order is not that important. You do want to use Spirits Within first if you can. If it gets mixed up, whatever. But Scorn before Fight. This is because we want to use Scorn again before our Fight or Flight ends. You can see the recast time is 25, Fight or Flight is 25. I can show that. If I use Circle of Scorn and Fight or Flight, I'll just use the rest of my rotation so you can see. Goring Blade with some weaves. We will be able to get that Scorn in right before the end. Let's do our opener until we get to that point, and I'll still continue it and show it again, just for good measure. So here we're gonna use Riot Blade and now use Scorn right before Goring Blade. And that way we get Scorn in right before Fight or Flight expires. Which means that it gets Snapshot and it gets the whole benefit of Fight or Flight. That's why I want to use Scorn right before our final Goring Blade, and then we Requiescat into Holy Spirit. It might be a little fast, but you will get the hang of it. The rest of it is very easy. It's just the openers a little crowded, but the rest of your rotation is very, very simple. You'll just be doing that forever, essentially. Now, just to go more into Paladin cooldowns, in case you actually want these defensives for some reason, we have the very basic stuff. We have Arm's Length, Reprisal, and Rampart. All tanks have these. Rampart is your basic self cooldown. Reprisal is for raid wides for everyone. Arm's Length is just knockbacks and trash pulls. Now we also have Sentinel. This is also something every tank has, but it has different names. If you're a Gunbreaker, I believe it's called Nebula. I forget what the Dark Knight one is called. Either way, everyone has it. The only ones that are unique to us are, well, the bad ones. So, you might have noticed we have a Gauge here in the corner. Obviously, every job has a secondary resource. Ours is our Oath Gauge, which allows us to use Sheltron, Intervention, and Cover. Now, usually you will only use Sheltron. The other two are very, very niche. Sheltron will just let you block incoming attacks, which is, I believe, a 20% damage reduction. It's a decent cooldown. Intervention is something that will never benefit you whatsoever. It is something you use on a target party member. It will reduce their damage taken, and it's going to be stronger if you have Rampart or Sentinel up, which will give it another 50% of the effect. So you would want to use like Rampart or Sentinel and then pop intervention. Doesn't matter which one you have. You don't need both. Then we have cover, which lets you take all the damage that someone else is going to take for the next 12 seconds, but they have to be close enough to you. If they're too far, it's not going to do anything. Cover is also kind of weird in that it only works on some attacks and then some go through it. And you can also kill yourself very easily with this, so be careful. They all cost exactly 50 of your gauge. You have 100 max, and the gauge goes up whenever you're attacking. Like if I now just pop Sheltron and start hitting, every auto attack that I do increases by 5. It's just steadily going up as I auto attack. So you can use Sheltron pretty much whenever. It will come up very, very quickly. You don't have to worry too much about them. But yeah, cover and intervention are more just like a raid progression. If you need to help your off tank with, or main tank or whatever, with a raid wide or tank buster or anything, then they can come in handy. The other ones that we have are Divine Veil, which also does nothing for us. This places a buff on us, and by itself does nothing. However, if we get healed, then everyone near us is going to get a shield. But it has to be popped by someone healing you. I'm just going to pretend I'm a healer. Bam. It vanishes. I don't get the shield, but everyone else around me will get the shield. So just you have to use this very, very early. Otherwise, it's going to be too late for whatever you're trying to mitigate. Then we have Passage of Arms, which is our cool looking one, which also is used for other people. It does increase your block rate to 100%, but you can't do anything during it. So it's a lot of downtime. This is usually used to help with really big raid wides during like the big transition raid wides that happen in a lot of bosses where you will just be standing there waiting for the big blast to happen. Then you pop this. Everyone behind you will take less damage, but they have to be behind you. So it's like a cone. It's pretty wide, but basically everyone in that area is going to take less damage. And of course you as well. The effect actually does linger. If I cancel it right now, it does linger for a little while. You saw that. It lingers for a little bit. So it is possible to end it early. For example, if there is a very quick raid wide, maybe an Akmorn or a Mornifa, where everyone's actually stacked, then you can very quickly use Passage of Arms right before it hits and then immediately cancel out of it. That way you don't lose your uptime, and it does help your party. You just have to be very careful with the timing of it. That's pretty much it for defensives. Paladins actually don't have that much for themselves. Intervention does nothing for us. Divine Veil, nothing. Cover, nothing. Passage of Arms, sort of. So, Paladins are pretty bad for main tanking. You're usually gonna be the off tank, especially because of Spirits Within. Now, our AoE rotation is literally 2 buttons. Total Eclipse and Prominence. This is all you do. You just press 2 buttons. Now, we do have another thing at our disposal, however, which is Holy Circle. So the way the Requiescat works is it'll increase our magic damage, and if we use it at higher than 80% of our MP, all our spells are immediate. So we can pop Requiescat and use Holy Circle instead. This does way more damage than the basic 2-button AoE rotation. And make sure to end with Confiteor. Oh, I forgot to target the dummy. Either way, because the Requiescat is very finicky in that you have to have enough MP, so be careful when you use it. But it can be useful with AoE pulls, because Holy Circle does a lot of damage. Confiteor is AoE, so every time you use Requiescat, make sure that your final cast is a Confiteor. This is your biggest nuke. Make sure to always use it. Other than that, there really isn't much to Paladin. We have the basic tank stuff like an interrupt, a stun. We actually have a secondary stun. this is a paladin only thing. We have shield bash, which is on the global cooldown. It does a bit of damage as well. Normally, if I use like this stun, you can weave it. But as you can see, shield bash you can't weave. It is on the global cooldown. So you usually don't want to use shield bash unless you're like really in a bad situation. Just an extra thing that paladins have, because why not? Then we have clemency, pretend it doesn't exist. I mean, okay, so realistically, you don't want to use clemency in a rage situation because it is just downtime and it can mess up your rotation. Because again, Requiescat requires you to have MP. If you don't have enough MP, then it might mess up everything. So you can at most use one clemency. Don't use more. Typically though, just don't use it to begin with, just throw it away. It's mostly used for like solo content, or if there's like a complete panic, everyone's dead during progression, and you still want to try to push it somehow, then yeah, you can help out with the clemency. It does heal for a decent amount, but usually just don't. That's mostly for the rotation. The way you pull as a paladin is very simple. I can show that. You start with the Holy Spirit because again, you can use one spell. You can use one spell. You don't want to use Holy Spirit if you don't have Requiescat normally, because it's not going to do enough damage to be worth it, but you can pull with it. I can show. It's a 2.5 recast and a 1.5 cast, so I just use it when it says 2. There's 2, I use Holy Spirit, bam. It hits perfectly, and you're fine. That is how you pull as a paladin every single time. Just Holy Spirit, and then you run in, and then you can do your combo. I don't think there's any situation in which you would not start it that way, except like maybe the E8 test opener, which is just funky. But even in that one, I believe you do Holy Spirit. Yeah, I guess a couple optimization things are that Holy Spirit, since it is ranged, can be used to do damage even during what would normally be downtime. For example, if I would be dodging AoE right now, I can just keep spamming my spells and I'll be okay. So that's like the one advantage that Paladin has over other tanks. But obviously you need to have your Requiescat be well timed. Because otherwise, if we use Holy Spirit here, we're going to be casting. It's miserable. It also doesn't do that much damage. So only really use spells if you have Requiescat, otherwise maybe a clemency. That's honestly it for Paladin though. There isn't really much that you can do. Like there's some minor optimizations with dropping atonements. Also, if you do end up messing up your rotation, or if you die, for example, and you don't have much MP, you might have to do some variations. Like for example, okay, so a situation where you would die, and your rotation says, okay, it's time to use Requiescat and Holy Spirit. You obviously can't because you don't have the MP for it as you just died. So just don't even try it. It will do nothing for you. Also, if your rotation gets misaligned, you can drop atonements to try to align your rotation again. You can also try to drop Holy Spirits, but it's usually not good. Also, don't drop atonements that would be during fight or fly. If you have like just basic filler atonements, those can be dropped to help align your rotation back to where it's supposed to be. And yeah, that's it for Paladin, honestly. Just keep hitting buttons. I'll just show the rotation one more time, or the opener rather. I don't really have a way to slow it down, but if need be, you can slow down the video, and then you can see which buttons I'm pressing a little clearer. But the full rotation literally is just alternating between your physical and magic rotations. So I'm just doing again like 4 Holy Spirits, weaving in the Spirits Within, and ending it with a Confiteor. After which we go back to Fast Blade. And that's, yeah, that's Paladin. I guess one more thing for optimization's sake, because might as well, is the most important thing you can do is Goring Blade. Goring Blade is the most important ability. You always want to have it twice within your fight or flight. So if you ever need to drop something, drop it like an atonement, for example. You want your Goring Blade. I can showcase. So for example, if I now just do my basic opener, and we pretend that this is a boss that is going to force us to run away. We cannot do our normal fight or flight window. For example, right now I have atonements, I have to run away. I can't use my atonement, I have to wait. Now I go back. Normally I would use 3 atonements, but I only use 2. I'm going to skip that atonement because it's more important for me to get my Goring Blade in before fight or flight ends. It is always your top priority to fit 2 Goring Blades within your fight or flight, because it will help snapshot the entire dot. So yeah, if you have downtime, just drop an atonement or 2, depending how far you were and how long you were gone, as long as you get your Goring Blade before fight or flight ends. That's always your priority. More optimization, I guess, is for weaves, which is, since you can double weave, if you're going to use fight or flight and you don't have a double weave window, like you don't, for example, have a Spirits Within to use immediately after, or a Circle of Scorn immediately before, wait a little bit before the fight or flight. Just wait like a tiny bit. That way it'll give you more leeway with Goring Blade at the end, because it is a very tight window. So for example, I'll show it with Spirits Within. I can use it immediately right now to weave it in. I just used it as soon as I could. However, compared to Circle of Scorn, which I will use at the end of my GCD. Right now. So both of those were a weave, but the other one I used immediately as soon as I could, and the other as late as I could. This gives me potentially an extra second, depending on your GCD. Well, almost like a second of extra time with fight or flight, because you would want to pop fight or flight at the end of that GCD instead of the beginning, if that makes sense. Again, just minor optimization to make it a little easier to fit your entire combo within your fight or flight. And yeah, that's all I can think of. Welcome to the sad life of being a paladin, man. Can't relate.